one way of looking at it is, let me first do this. How many kingdoms do we find in the Bible in succession? You go to Daniel 2, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. How many do you find there?
4 plus 10.
4 plus?
10.
Plus 10.
Well, multiple.
Yeah, multiple. So we've got number 1 is Babylon. Then Medo-Persia. Then what Rome? Pagan Rome.
Yeah.
Then you get
Papal Rome.
Papal Rome. Then you get
The United States.
United States. Then you get
UN.
the United Nations. Interesting. United States, United Nations. And then what do you get at the end?
Jesus.
His kingdom.
There were too many voices. What do you get then? The 8th.
Papacy. Papal Rome.
It's the end time papacy.
Oh.
End time papacy. All right. So we have number 1. We have Babylon. We have number 2. We have Medo-Persia with actually only a minor Medo component. Darius in the beginning was a Mede, but the rest of the rulers are all Persians. Number 3, we have Greece. Number 4, we have pagan Rome. And then the pagan Rome is followed by papal Rome, isn't it? And papal Rome is also called what? Babylon. It's the same. So this has a relationship to papal Rome. And then we said this relationship would be the United States, and this would be the United Nations. And this would be end time Rome. End time Rome. You remember that riddle in Revelation 17 where it says, when he will come, he will be one of the 7, but he is the 8th or something to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
So the 8th, and here you've got the numbers here, 4, 5, 6, oh, did I mess it up? 4, 5, yeah, sorry. This is... So here papal Rome is the 5th. 6, 7, and 8. And interestingly enough, we have the same understanding regarding the churches. How many churches do we have? 7. I thought they were 8. Or am I mistaken? Well, in the Revelation you find 7 churches, isn't it? But the question is Laodicea going to go to heaven? No, Laodicea doesn't go to heaven. So who goes to heaven?
Philadelphia.
It is the 8th. And when you, it would be a subject on its own, but one of the easiest way to prove this is when you go to the Church of Philadelphia. To her are promises given, and these promises are applied by Ellen White in her first vision, where she sees a bright light at the beginning of the advent of the road that is high and cast up above the world. And what does the angel say is that bright light at the beginning that shines all the way?
Midnight cry.
It's the midnight cry. That's the Millerite experience, the midnight cry. And what church was that? The Midnight Cry Church, Millerite history.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia, loud and clear. Philadelphia. Brotherly love. Why brotherly love? When you read the story there, you can read the book by Nickel that was published. It is called The Midnight Cry. They were so prepared let me put it this way. They wouldn't go to sleep if there was a shadow between themselves and their brother or sister. They would rather deny themselves a sleep and go and knock on the door and say, is everything all right? Because if there was a difference between them and their sister, they could not see face to face. And they knew the Lord would be coming. That is how they loved each other, and that was Philadelphia. And then you get into the Laodicean story. We are the Laodiceans. And at the end of the road, the story ends again in the midnight, the loud cry. The midnight cry was a type of the loud cry at the end of the world. We will have a repetition of that story. It will be beautiful. And they will have their the father's name and the name of the new city on their forehead. They will also be, that is a picture for the seal that they carry. And there is one prophecy that will find its fulfillment when the heathen will come and worship at their feet. When you read in Revelation 3, I will make those that are of the synagogue of Satan come and kneel down at your feet and confess that you have loved the Lord. I say it in my own words. And that is what happens just shortly before the coming of Christ. You've got the partial resurrection, the disillusionment of the masses. They are not, their intoxication is taken away, and they see that they have failed miserably. And they fall down at the feet of the saints whose faces are shining like the sun, and they confess that Jesus has loved them. Philadelphia. So you can picture this. You have Laodicea, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea, and then again Philadelphia. And I just want you to catch this, and that is the number 8. Number 8 stands for circumcision on the 8th day. The resurrection took place on the 8th day. It's the resurrection to new life. So in the end time here, you will have the resurrection of, and it is also the covenant of a new heart. When the heart is circumcised, there will be the pure, the adult, the full-grown expression of the evil one, facing the full-blown expression of Christ who loved his people so that they are reflected in his image, Philadelphia. Philadelphia just stands as another word for loving your brothers, isn't it? Philharmonics, those that love the harmony, and Adelphos, the brethren. Christ is not ashamed to call his brethren his own. His love is Philadelphian love. All right. Having said this now, so we know now that Medo-Persia parallels the United States. Medo-Persia was pictured by what animal in Daniel 8? By a ram. How many horns does a ram have? 2. And how many horns does the United States have? 2. 2 horns. What are the horns? Republicanism. And Protestantism. Right. And it comes up out of the earth, and at first you see what? A little lamb, isn't it? And this little lamb grows into a ram when it's adult, and when it is a ram, then it will start to speak. And that is the legislative character of the United States. And we know that when it will speak those laws into existence, we are at the Sunday law. Now, if this is true, then, and just catch this now, then we can go back into the story of the Medo-Persians and see the story of the United States prefigured. Shall I say that again? If Medo-Persia prefigures the United States, then we can go back to the story of the Medo-Persians to see what will happen in the United States. Before we do that, I would like to just to introduce a little thought here that is of some importance. Ellen White equates these two powers in that sense that she says God's people was in captivity in Babylon as well as in the 1260 years of the Babylonian captivity under papal rule, which are the 1260 years. We catch that thought? That's Prophets and Kings 700 something. So she says these two powers equal, or the experience of God's people in these phases is identical. So one is a type, the other is an antitype. And here what we are looking at today, which will give us the key, is the Medo-Persian Empire. Now I would like you to open your Bibles, or I can read it for you in Daniel 11. But first of all, I would like to read Daniel chapter 10, verse 1. Let us read Daniel chapter 9, verse 1. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. You have, in the first year, and that is something that we want to make note of here, you have a time of the end here, a time of the end. That means something comes to its end and something new begins. We are at this point here. So the Babylonian rule ends, and in come the Medo-Persians. And at this point in time, you actually have two parallel rulers. One is Darius, the Mede, that we just read, and the other one is Cyrus. And we can read about this in Daniel 10, verse 1. In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, and so forth. What you need to know is that Darius, or let's put it this way, Babylon fell 538 BC, and Darius must have died 536, and he was, I think they were related, if I'm not mistaken. So Cyrus, in deference to the age of Darius, let him have the throne, and the fall of Babylon marked the first year of Cyrus's reign. So in the third year, when Darius died, he actually took over the throne. And what is special about Cyrus?
He's the one that brought Babylon down.
Yeah, he brought Babylon down. That is right. And after bringing it down, he became a witness to what experience? Under Darius. Daniel is thrown in the lion's den, and he comes out of the lion's den unscathed, and he listens to this man. When you speak to a man that has been in a lion's den, wow, he's got a story to tell. And Daniel tells him that his name is in the scriptures. You will let the people of God go for free. And Cyrus decides to follow the divine command. I'd just like to clear the board because I need a little more space for what we are continuing to do. So at this waymark, at the time of the end, we are here, time of the end of Babylon, Medo-Persia. You have now Darius, and you have Cyrus. Cyrus is the only heathen king in the Old Testament that is given the supreme title of the Anointed One. He is a type of Christ, and that is beautiful. We may see why that is the case. All right. So Darius dies. Cyrus gives the first decree. The first decree for the people of Israel to go, and this whole story that ensues is the basic pattern of the three angels' messages that we have learned in Bible school. Then I do not know if anybody knows the next king, his son. That is sort of a little difficult. You've got Cambyses or Cambyses, and then you have a usurper that is called Smerdis, and he actually appears in Ezra, because here the work 50,000 leave Babylon. They start with the rebuilding of the temple, and there was a huge feast when they had the altar built, but then when they started to build the temple, the whole thing lost momentum, and they almost finished, or they almost stopped building when this guy came to the throne, and the enemies of Israel, knowing that he was a usurper and he wasn't friendly to the Jews, send a letter to this false Smerdis and say, do you know that this and this and that is happening in Jerusalem? And he writes back and he says, this needs to stop immediately. So the building of the temple comes to a standstill. And that is when things go really downhill, and the Lord doesn't send rain, and he sends pests, and then who appears on the scene? Which prophets? Sorry?
This is Zerubbabel.
Those are the rulers of the people, right? Zerubbabel in the time, but which prophets appear on the scene that say, you live in your houses and you work like horses, and there are holes in the bags, and you sow but you do not bring in?
Hosea?
No.
Haggai?
Haggai, yeah. So, Haggai, and who's his companion? And that's Zechariah. And it's the only record in the scripture that I ever read where the message of the prophets was welcomed. Was welcomed. The only record. Otherwise, you've always got stiff resistance. And Haggai says, is it time to live in, built, furnished, equipped houses, and the house of the Lord is left in ruins? You can't do this. And by faith, they start to build, and the Lord was helping them. And by that time, Darius the First, the Great, had taken the throne, and the Jews had sent to him a request for the original document that Cyrus had issued for the building of the temple. And Cyrus writes back, and while they had already begun by faith to build the temple, the letter of Darius arrives and gives the second command, or the second decree, to build the temple. And it is built, and it is finally finished in AD 516, exactly 70 years after the temple had been destroyed in 586 by the Babylonians. So here you've got the first decree. And then Darius dies, and he also has a successor, and that is now.
Cambyses.
No, Cambyses was we've had already. That is Xerxes, and we all know Xerxes from a whole book in the Bible, because it deals with a lady that was Jewish. And she was very beautiful. She was actually the most beautiful in the whole realm of the Medo-Persians. We're talking about Esther, isn't it? And this is really interesting, because what happens in the days of Queen Esther, which is a type 4. What happens? What is the story of Queen Esther about? The whole book. They tried to kill all the Jews. And that is a type 4 at the end of the world, for the Sunday law. He who will not buy and sell shall be eliminated. And he who doesn't buy and sell is the one who keeps the commandments, isn't it? And when you look at this, at the parable of Christ of the 10 virgins, the wise virgins say to the foolish virgins, go to them that sell and buy. It's implied, and buy. The foolish virgins will buy and sell when it comes to the crunch. You get that? I hope none of us in this room will be with those. So that is a type of the Sunday law. After Xerxes, you have only in scripture the mention of Artaxerxes I, and that is the one of that gives the third decree. And that is the one we are so familiar with, because it is in 450, given in 457 BC, and it's the beginning of the 2300 evenings and mornings. What I want you to see as well is the following. You have a first decree, you have a second decree, and what is this here? This is a great disappointment, isn't it? And here you've got the arrival of a third decree, or the third angel. So this here is the second angel's message, and this is the first angel's message. And this is the little disappointment, which is related to the second angel's message. You see that? So you have the pattern of, this is the prime example that most Adventists are somehow familiar with, that this relates to the three angels' messages. Now we said, and this is this is the story of the Medo-Persian, or it's a Medo in brackets, and the story of the Persian kings. So that's the story of the United States. When you come to this point here, these are actually the kings that reign in succession. Thereafter, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thereafter, you've got 6. 6 or 7 more, depending, because whenever there was a new successor, there was murder and intrigue, and this one kills that one, and then he finally gets to the throne, and depending on whether you count those that live only for a couple of days before they are murdered, you have 30, in total you have 13 kings in Persia. And what I thought was very interesting is that they were called King of Kings, was their royal title, King of Kings and Pharaoh of Egypt. King of Kings and Pharaoh of Egypt, because they controlled Egypt. Now, the problem was brewing, though, because there was a power in the west that was coming up, and that was the power of the Greeks. And already under Darius I, here you have an interaction with the Greeks. They sent fleets. And every time they were defeated, and finally under Artaxerxes I, here they made peace with the Greeks. Peace with the Greeks. We will see why this is important. When you look at this structure now, you find that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kings here, the Persian kings. And these are the first kings in Persia, but also in a sense, because the story is cut off here in Daniel 11, the story is cut off here. In that sense, they are also the last. Let me put that thought again. You have these kings mentioned here, so they are the first, but Xerxes in Daniel 11 becomes also the last. Is that understood? All right. Now, if we want to apply this to the United States, and we ask ourselves, could this be that we are dealing here with the presidents of the United States? We must find an anchor point, and that is the pivotal point that we need to look at, because you need a time of the end, you need a time sequence where something ends and where something new begins. That is what you need. And for instance, the classic time of the end that we as Adventists usually talk about is related to what date? 1798, because what ends? A time period, isn't it? 1260 days, and something new begins. It's actually the time of the United States.
Yeah.
So that would be the beginning. We are now looking at the end. Can we find a reference for that? And I would like just to read for you from Daniel 11 verse 40, which relates to 1798. And it's the first part of the verse. It says there, at the time of the end, there you've got the time of the end, shall the king of the south push at him, king of the north. That is Daniel 11:40, first part. And in 1798, you've got the phenomenon that the king of the south, which Ellen White defines for us as atheism, this is the king of the south, pushes at him, which is the king of the north, which is the papacy. And the papacy almost dies. And that's why what it receives here is described as the deadly wound. And in this context, you have the emergence in 1776. You've got the Declaration of Independence. The little lamb comes out of the earth, and it's taking shape and form. and the papacy goes down due to this power that comes out of the bottomless pit, and because it is the animal that comes out of the bottomless pit pushes. And the only two animals in the Bible that push, well, there are actually three, but which ones do you know?
Bulls.
The bull, the ox, and? Sorry? The ram, yeah. So the ram, which is the United States, will at some time push. But we are not looking at that ram here, we are looking at an ox. And in the Bible you've got good oxen and bad oxen. That's a story for itself. Right, so now we go to the end of this story, and in Revelation 11:40b it says now, and the king of the north, which is the papacy, shall come against him like a whirlwind. That means surprisingly, like a surprise and with strong force, with chariots. What would chariots stand for? The Red Cross, or... No, I'm being sarcastic. Chariots stands for military might, isn't it? And with horsemen stands for military might. And with many ships, what do ships stand for? Commerce. That is commercial power. So you've got military and commercial power, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. When did this happen? When did the papacy come back against atheism? And then you've got the time of the end defined. 1989. That's 1989 here.
What happened in 1989?
That's a story of Pope John Paul II cooperating with Reagan, the CIA, and the bringing down of the Eastern Bloc countries. And that is where the papacy retaliates for the deadly wound in 1798. That is what happens there. It's the unholy alliance where America, for the first time in a covert operation, joins the papacy and becomes the false prophet. And this due to a very successful indoctrination of evangelical Christianity in the United States that puts the Antichrist either in the future or into the past, so you cannot identify the Antichrist in the present. And therefore Reagan, and with him many others, believed that communism was actually the anti-Christian power. Like there are evangelical Christians that say that Islam is the anti-Christian power. Whenever you refuse to accept the basic principles of the interpretation of Daniel, which involves the little horn, and you put the little horn and connect it with Antiochus Epiphanes, like the whole evangelical world does, you end up in the arms of Rome. Welcome back to Big Mama. So, if we have a time of the end here, we've got 1989. And at the time, you had Reagan giving over his presidency to whom? Hmm? Who followed after Reagan? Wow, am I in America or where am I?
First Bush. First Bush, was that?
Yeah, Bush Senior. Sorry for that. Bush Senior. And then we had the pleasure to meet Clinton. And then we had the pleasure to meet. We had the pleasure to meet Bush Jr. And then we had the pleasure to meet Obama. And then Trump. And let me tell you, it was in 2000. I can actually show you the name near the date. Maybe I can just. Do I have it here? Ta-da. I think it was 2014 or so where I heard this interpretation for the first time. And then Trump came in and we all dropped our jaws. Trump. Because if type and anti-type is going to play, then Trump will be the guy who brings in, or under him, the Sunday law will be brought in. You catch that?
What about Biden? Where does that come in?
Yeah, that's very good. Very good question, Alex. I like that. That is where we just had a look at the Greeks here. Where are the Greeks here? Did I not mention them under Xerxes?
To the right, they're under peace. Artaxerxes.
He also, Xerxes also deals with the Greeks, yeah. They had three major, the first campaign under Darius the Great, and also the second campaign here. So you have two campaigns, military campaigns against the Greeks that fail, and one of them gives rise to the marathon race, you know, where one who runs to Athens and tells them, we won against the Greeks, and that's why they run the marathon.
And then he died.
And then he died, the poor guy, probably of arrhythmia. And the third Greco-Persian war was under Xerxes. That's the famous Battle of Salamis, the naval battle, and the Greeks are able to drive the Persians forever from their soil. So the third and big engagement here with the Greeks was under Xerxes, and where they were defeated. And we said that we have Babylon, Medo-Persia. Who comes after the Medo-Persians?
Rome.
Yeah?
Oh, Greece.
The Greeks. The Greeks. So, and they stand for the United Nations. So we are at that time where we are about to see that change happening in our. Here you've got again the Greeks. Now you ask the question, where does Biden come in? After Trump, we had Biden, and if this still holds true, and we will know very soon, then Biden was sort of an intermediary figure, because after Biden it could very well be, no, shall we say it will be, that we will have Trump again.
Oh yeah, it's like close to 100%.
And what did Biden bring in? What happened under Biden? You've got the whole pandemic, but what does the pandemic bring in? Does the pandemic bring in the Greeks?
He's in control.
Who is supposed now to regulate and guide and legislate in all further pandemics that may hit our wonderful globe?
The WHO.
The
WHO.
The WHO, the World Health Organization. That stands for the Greeks. You catch that? The Greeks is the, this is, I mean, it's just fascinating. When Alexander, within his brief reign of public life of about 12, 13 years, all the way from Greece, Syria, Israel, Egypt. In Egypt, they welcome him with open arms, and the Egyptians deify him and say he is the personification of Amen-Ra, the son of the sun god. And he gives them privileges because they hated the Persians. They hated them. And then he goes back via, and by the way, coming down through Palestine to Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem was at that time under Persian rules and had received all the benefits from these rulers in building the temple. And now all of a sudden, whoa, you've got Alexander. And he must have been a tall guy, and he rode the tallest horse that you could find in his army. So they say he was about, I do not know, 9 or 10 feet high when he sat on his horse. A real majestic figure. And there's the story that the ancients, the high priest and the officials of Jerusalem, they didn't resist like Tyre. Tyre resisted, and it was brought down after a 7-month siege and razed. And there's a prophecy in the Bible regarding this. And he comes to Jerusalem, and they show him the prophecy that there would be a power that will come after the Greeks. They show him Daniel 7 and Daniel 8. And he grants favors to the Jews, but this was, you know, for the time being, that was quite tricky because they were still officially under Persian rule, and they didn't know whether this Alexander guy, what was going to happen to him. Should he fail, then they would incur real penalties for this from the Persian government. So it was quite tricky, but based on prophecy, they could see that he was the new world power. Catch that. By faith in the word of prophecy, they could act like here in the building of the temple. They knew the temple was God's will. Now, the point I want to bring in or make is that Biden brings in or under him, we've got the Greek connection. That is, the Greek connection is building up, and we are being prepared for a one world government. Now read with me Daniel 11, verse 1 to 4. Also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I, that's Daniel, stood to confirm and to strengthen him. That is, Gabriel strengthens Daniel. And now I will show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia. So Daniel lives under, he is now under Cyrus, and he says, there shall yet stand up 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. Now, when you look at these kings here, then you say, okay, he was, if Darius is the one that is, then 3 more, 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one would be far richer than them all. Xerxes was proverbial for his riches. There's one historian that says that you would have been able to drain the rivers of Persia, but never the treasury of Xerxes. That is how rich he was. Trump, any association with riches?
No,
No?
he's the most broke guy in the world.
And there's something interesting, you know. If this is the last president, it would be the omega of the United States, isn't it? And who was the first president? George Washington. What did he? And was he a poor or a wealthy man? He was pretty wealthy. What did he make his wealth with? He was a real estate agent. Alpha, Omega. All right. So this is what I wanted to present to you, and I would like just to close off with another parallel that we can draw from Scripture, and I will just mention the outline because we're already closing our time here, and that is in Revelation 11. You find the story of the kings of Persia in great detail. The king of the north, the king of the south. That means the Seleucid Empire against the Ptolemaic Empire. The Ptolemaic Empire is Egypt, and the Seleucids are Syria. And there is a constant battle going in and then on, and then Rome enters the picture and starts to dominate, and as Rome is introduced, there are 4 emperors that lead up to this great disappointment here in the history of the Roman Empire as far as God's people is concerned, because the Roman Empire touches ultimately whom as well, or whom specifically?
Jesus.
Jesus. The Roman Empire through Pontius Pilate touches Jesus, and this is mentioned in 11 verse 22. And shall be broken up, yea, also the prince of the covenant is mentioned. And now, whom, or under which emperor did Jesus die? Roman emperor. Sorry?
Augustus?
No?
Oh, was it? Oh, died. Sorry, he was
Died.
born under Augustus.
Born under Augustus. Died.
Tiberius.
Tiberius. We read in Luke. When Jesus was when Jesus was baptized, he was baptized in the time, it happened in the time of Tiberius Caesar. So the great disappointment, his death, was under Tiberius. And now, I actually forgot to make a list. Tiberius, the one under Augustus. Now, do you think we can manage to calculate back the Caesars? Who was before Tiberius? Who gave over to Tiberius? The story, if I remember correctly, begins with Pompey. And Pompey gives over to Augustus.
Yeah. Man, I can't
And then we are missing the third one. Augustus Caesar, and this is bad news. History minor. Can somebody look this up on their smart
Julius
tablets?
Caesar?
Julius.
Julius.
That's it.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Well, it says 44 BCE.
When was Julius murdered? Was he murdered?
So this is what says Google. Augustus came to power after the assassination of Julius Caesar, 44 BCE.
Oh, Julius.
That's
before.
right. So we have
Augustus.
Julius was murdered, then Augustus came in, isn't it?
Okay.
So we have Augustus.
Okay.
And then you have Julius, from which we have our July, and then you've got Pompey.
That's true.
If that's correct. Tiberius, the point I want to make is in Daniel 11, the story builds up to Tiberius. And then it builds up again. There are many emperors, and the Bible doesn't list them all. But the story builds up and builds up to Constantine. What he does. We will maybe have a look at this another time. And what happens under Constantine? Is there a decree?
Yes.
What decree?
Sunday.
Sunday worship.
When was that given?
3:21.
321. What date? March 3. Tomorrow. That was a couple of years ago. The point again is the Bible links when it brings these stories, it repeats these stories. You find Tiberius is linked to the cross, Constantine is linked to the Sunday law. Now, another thought that is quite interesting is when you read here in Daniel chapter 11, when you have the Medo-Persians coming up, and then the Greeks. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided. This is now the Greek kingdom, towards the four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity. Alexander the Great didn't have children or sons, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside him. So there's a plucking up there. And with this thought, I would like to conclude our study. And that is, let me just, where shall I do this? When Rome conquers, it always conquers in 3 steps. So you have pagan Rome, you have papal Rome, and you have end time Rome. What were the 3 obstacles that pagan Rome had to overcome for world dominion?
Oh, we have a 3.
As it moved from the European continent over to Asia Minor, it was first confronted by the Seleucid Empire, which was called Syria at the time. And in Daniel 8 we read that there would be a reaching out for the east. There would be the pleasant land, and you what was the third part? That was Egypt. So the east is Syria. When we come to papal Rome, you've got the beast with the 10 horns. How many horns are plucked out? 3. Which are these horns?
Ostrogoth, Vistulae, and Herulae.
That's right. We've got the Herulae, Ostrogoths, and the Vandals. When we come to end time Rome, what needs to be taken out of the way?
The U.S. Constitution.
That is right. In order for America to fall, but looking at it from the perspective of Rome conquering the United States is one of the things that it needs to conquer. And what is another name in Scripture for the United States? You've got a hint here. The pleasant land. It is the glorious land, because that was the land where Ellen White says the land that God blessed above all other. It should have been a beacon, a lighthouse. Like she says of old Jerusalem, had they remained faithful, they would have never stood a Roman sentinel at their portals, at their gates, nor would there have been a Roman banner on their city. It was because of their disobedience that they were subjected to heathen powers. And it's the same with us. Whenever we suffer for disobedience. Okay, so we have the glorious land here. The glorious land, which is the United States. And then you've got Egypt again. And then let us see what we have in addition. And he shall shall enter into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom, Moab, and the children of Ammon. So there are three peoples that will escape. He shall stretch forth also his hand upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. And there's a third power there.
Is it Protestantism?
I think the power that doesn't escape in here is, I owe this to you, but I think it's the king of the south, which would be atheism. I have to verify this for you. I think I could, but the point I want to make is the following. When pagan Rome conquered these three areas, were there Sabbath-keeping people in Syria?
Sure.
I'm sure they were, but where were they specifically? Where? In the pleasant land, isn't it? In Israel.
Mm-hmm.
You agree with that? Yeah. All right, so here you've got the Sabbath. And which of these three tribes there's evidence that they kept the Sabbath? The Hebrew. They kept the Sabbath. And in when end time Rome strikes, and it strikes the United States, will there be Sabbath keepers here?
Oh, yes.
Hopefully you and I will be amongst them. So you see, whenever Rome strikes, and the steps that lead to her power means that somewhere on the road Sabbath keepers are squashed under her feet. And that is the building up to the Sunday law. I remember when Trump became president, it was such an incredible surprise that, and we were living in Germany at the time, and we said, if this is really true, we need to get ready. And now we are years later,
Another chance.
and we still need to get ready. What's happening? Why are we not ready? And I can only say this is grace of God, that He gives us the time to get ready, and quickly so. Because if this is true and the Sunday law emerges and I don't have the time for this, but I could show you also that there's a third element that is united to these 3 steps that is involved here, and that will take place as the Sunday law is established in the United States. This will not go down with all people, and for political reasons, Adventists will come into the limelight for religious reasons, and when the political forces in the United States will be agitated beyond a certain point, there will be an element, the third element that you find in each one of these 3 steps. What is that?
Persecution.
That would be for religious reasons. I talk about political reasons. When people cannot reason out their differences anymore, what will they do? They will start to fight. And when you've got one citizen fighting against the other, what do you have?
Civil war.
Civil war. Is there anything that Ellen White said that this country would see a civil war again?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. This country was born in a civil war, and it will end in a civil war. Time to get ready. And it's good that we know this, and the real challenge, and I don't hope that will come to me, but this is to the best of my knowledge that I can address the subject that I put myself out on a limb for, that this will happen under Trump. So we will speak again in November.
I couldn't hear everything you said, but